even know why he took me. I'm nobody special, just a typical high school kid. But I'll never forget the night that van pulled up alongside me as I walked home from a friend's house. It was dumb to be out alone that late, but it was only a few blocks. I figured I'd be fine when the van door slid open and 3 guys jumped out in ski masks. It took my brain a second to even process what was happening. By then, it was too late. They grabbed me and shoved me into the back of the van, tying my wrists and ankles. One guy yanked my beanie hat down over my eyes so I couldn't see. The doors slammed shut, and I felt the van taking off. Blind and bound, I freaked out, screaming and thrashing around. A rag got stuffed in my mouth to shut me up. The van drove for what must have been over an hour before stopping. I got dragged out and into a building, I think. They tied me to a chair and finally ripped the hat off my eyes. I found myself in a windowless concrete room lit by a single bulb. It looked like an abandoned warehouse or bunker. 2 of the guys from the van stood silently in the corner, wearing skeleton masks. A metal door creaked open, and in walked the man in charge. I could tell by the way the other 2 straightened up when he entered. He smiled coldly at me and introduced himself as Elias. I demanded to know why they'd taken me, but he just laughed. Over the next few days, Elias visited me regularly in that cold, empty room. He never explained his motives or what he planned to do. He'd just talk calmly about random stuff or force me to play bizarre mind games and trivia quizzes. It was totally nuts. The masked henchman would show up periodically to untie me so I could eat disgusting soup and use a rusty bucket in the corner. Other than that, they never spoke or reacted to anything, even my pleas for mercy and freedom. Just when I'd given up all hope, a miracle happened. One night, I heard shouting and chaos outside the room. Suddenly, the door busted open and cops swarmed in, guns raised. They'd somehow tracked the kidnappers to their hideout, maybe followed the van. As they untied me, an officer gently explained that Elias was a deranged schizophrenic who'd kidnapped teens before, believing voices told him to. The other 2 men were his gullible brothers, just going along with it. They'd all be locked up for good now. I barely slept that first night home, waking up gasping from nightmares where I was back in that empty room with the madman and his masked brothers. Months of therapy eventually helped me move on from the trauma. But I'll never walk anywhere alone again, especially not at night. There are some real psychos out there who snatch innocent people for insane reasons only they understand. They hide away in the shadows of abandoned places, acting out twisted fantasies. I learned the hard way that monsters could be lurking down any dark street, waiting for the right moment to steal you away into the unknown. I don't even remember walking to my car that night after work, exhausted from a long shift. I just wanted to get home to bed. I must have let my guard down because I never saw him coming. 1 second I was fishing for my keys in my purse. The next, a cloth was slapped over my face. Some sickly sweet chemical smell filled my nose and everything started spinning. I tried to scream, but my body wasn't responding. When I regained blurry consciousness, I was tied to a chair in a dim room. It looked like an abandoned warehouse with dusty concrete floors and boarded-up windows. Fear flooded my body as I realized I'd been kidnapped. Heavy footsteps approached from behind me. A tall, masked man dressed all in black circled slowly until he was right in my face. I could see only his piercing eyes glaring through the ski mask. He didn't speak, just stared. After several agonizing minutes, he finally uttered in a gravelly voice, "So, Amy, you're awake. Good. Now the fun can begin." My heart seized. How did he know my name? Who was this creep? When I demanded answers, he let out a chilling laugh. "Don't worry about who I am. You belong to me now. I've been planning to make you mine for quite some time." His menacing words turned my blood to ice. This had been premeditated. Over the next few days, he put me through unimaginable torment and abuse. When he wasn't assaulting me, He kept me blindfolded and tied up alone in silence and darkness for hours, sometimes drugging me to sleep so I lost all track of time. The psychological terror was even worse than the physical pain. I had no idea if or when I would escape this living hell. The masked man remained eerily calm no matter how much I pleaded. He told me no one even realized I was missing yet. While cleaning my wounds one evening, he casually mentioned having done this many times before. I was just his latest captive in a long line of victims. The thought of ending up like the others who I guessed had not survived filled me with nauseating dread. Somehow I managed to undo my blindfold and chew through my bindings when he left me alone the next day. I ran as fast as I could through the warehouse corridors, looking desperately for an exit. But I had underestimated his cunning. He was waiting right around the corner, wielding a metal pipe. As it connected with my head, he hissed, "You'll regret that, you little bitch." The world went dark once again. By the time I came to, I was in a small, dank cell chained to the wall by my ankle. A stale crust of bread and cup of dirty liquid were my only provisions. This was to be my new reality until I died here alone and forgotten, or so I thought. Exactly 1 week after my abduction, I heard distant shouts and heavy boots echoing down the hall. Suddenly, the door burst open and SWAT officers swarmed in, apprehending my merciless captor once and for all. I was finally free. But some chains can't be broken, even when escape comes. He still haunts my dreams, that masked face mocking and menacing. No matter how many times the police reassured me I'm safe now, there are some horrors that never fully let you go. The places they lead you to in your mind's darkest corners can feel inescapable. I might be home, but a part of me remains shackled in that cold, concrete hell, and the ghost of his threat lingers. You'll regret it. Because sometimes the monsters we think we've eluded are actually just patiently lying in wait inside us all along. It was just supposed to be a normal Thursday night. I had gone to the grocery store to pick up a few things for dinner, then stopped at the gas station on my way home. As I was pumping gas into my car, a large white van pulled up on the other side of the pump. I didn't think much of it at first, just another customer getting gas. But as I finished filling up and went to get back in my car, the van's side door slid open and 2 men jumped out, grabbing me from behind. One of them clamped a gloved hand over my mouth before I could even scream, while the other wrenched my arms behind my back. I struggled with all my might, stomping on their feet and trying to wriggle out of their grip, but they were too strong. They shoved me into the back of the van and slammed the door shut. Everything happened so fast I felt completely disoriented, like this must be some kind of nightmare. As the van sped off, I could hear the 2 men talking in low voices up front. "Drive normal, don't speed. We don't want to get pulled over." I was still in shock, part of me hoping this was just a case of mistaken identity, and they'd realize they had the wrong person. But when one of them called back to ask if I was comfortable and chuckled at my muffled cries, I knew this was no accident. My mind was racing, heart pounding in my chest as I tried to get my bearings. I was lying on the floor in the back of the van, my hands and feet now bound with rope. It was mostly empty aside from some boxes and blankets. There were no windows or way to see where we were headed. I could only feel the bumps and turns as we drove farther from the gas station. From safety, from anyone who could help me. The terror was paralyzing. After what seemed like an eternity, the van finally rolled to a stop. The engine cut off, and the 2 men opened the side door again, grabbing me under the arms. I tried pleading with them to let me go, but they ignored my cries as they dragged me out of the van. I could see now we were in a dark alley between some run-down warehouses. It was nighttime and eerily quiet. They forced me through a side door into one of the warehouses, the smell of mildew and oil heavy in the air. They led me down a dim corridor to a small, windowless room with a dingy mattress on the floor. After removing the rope binding my wrists and ankles, they pushed me down onto the mattress and slammed the door shut. I heard a lock click into place. I was trapped. Alone in that tiny room, the panic really started to set in. Why had they taken me? What had they taken me? What did they want? Were they going to kill me? I thought about my family, wondering if they had realized yet that something was wrong. Would I ever see them again? Exhausted from the adrenaline crash, I eventually cried myself to sleep on that filthy mattress. The next day, the two men returned to ask if I was ready to cooperate. They wanted access to my bank accounts, insisting I give them my PIN numbers and online account passwords. I refused. This went on for days, them alternating between threats and false promises that they'd let me go if I just gave them what they wanted. They kept me weak and disoriented, providing only minimal food and water, but I couldn't bring myself to betray my family's trust, no matter how dire my situation became. I lost all track of time in that windowless room. My only indication that days were passing was when the men would come to pressure me again. I became increasingly desperate, wondering if I would waste away in that miserable warehouse. But I clung to the hope that help would come before it was too late. Surely someone had noticed I was missing by now. My family must be looking for me, right? The police had to be searching. I just needed to hold on a little longer, stay strong. I wouldn't let these monsters break me. Somehow I endured the fear and isolation, never knowing if each new day would be my last. Until finally, miraculously, I heard shouting and loud bangs from outside the room. Heavy footsteps came pounding down the corridor, and then the door burst open. Blinding light flooded in as a gruff voice yelled, "Police. Get down on the ground." My nightmare was over. I was finally safe,